Buddhist BookChat is your gateway to the wisdom of Buddhist literature, past and present. Each episode dives into inspiring books by great masters, contemporary teachers, insightful authors, academics, and leading publishers, exploring the teachings, stories, and practices they value. Whether you're new to Buddhism or a seasoned practitioner, join us to discover new reads, timeless wisdom, and the joy of bringing the Dharma from the page into daily life. Our guest for today is Traleg Khandro. Traleg Khandro, longtime student and wife to the late Traleg Kyabgon Rinpoche, the ninth, studied Buddhism under Traleg Kyabgon Rinpoche's guidance for many years and has undertaken numerous long meditation retreats. Khandro-la has given commentary on Traleg Rinpoche's teachings in Australia, America, Europe, the United Kingdom, and Southeast Asia. At Rinpoche's request, Khandro-la received traditional Tibetan yoga training after qualifying as a Hatha yoga instructor. Khandro-la also has a degree in psychology. In her professional life, she ran a business consultancy specializing in business re-engineering. Most recently, Traleg Khandro is the director of Shogun Publications, an Australian-based Dharma book publisher dedicated to making available the teachings of the late Traleg Kyabgon Rinpoche, as well as works by contemporary Buddhist authors. Okay, welcome Traleg Khandro to Buddhist BookChat. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome. I've been looking forward to this for a little while. I woke up feeling slightly excited, which is unusual for me. I'm usually fairly deadpan. So I thought we would start just, I've already told listeners about who you are. So I thought we'd go into your background in the Dharma to start with, and then how you entered publishing.
Okay. Well, I was very lucky early on in life, as a young teenager, to have a Dharma center open up in walking distance from my home.
Hmm.
And so finding the Dharma was very easy. And it was sort of intrigued me, took somewhat of a hold. But I still continued on with my teenage years and so forth, and kept coming back to centres. There ended up being another centre, Traleg Rinpoche Centre, that opened up later on in my teens, I think it was still. And I also went to Chenrezig in Queensland, which is a beautiful retreat centre. And so my spiritual journey had very good influences early on, which I'm very happy with. I certainly wasted plenty of time despite this fortunate circumstances. But it was very much like coming home in a way and finding my feet. I like to be argumentative still to this day. And so my desire to sort of ponder and argue points of the Dharma, was welcomed. And so, from an intellectual perspective, the Dharma became very fulfilling, sort of fairly early on. And to meditate, to have peace, and to sit with the abundance of chaos in my mind was very incredibly helpful. And I think it really gives one a different life. You experience life differently when you spend time with what I call the full catastrophe
Mm.
of how the mind creates so many so many different moods, so many endless this endless creativity, and learning to have a relationship with that becomes healthy and reduces our suffering and increases our joy and our connection with the world.
Mm.
So all of these things have been part of my life's journey, to which I can't describe how grateful I am, and in a sense indebted to the masters, past and present and emerging, as our First Nations people would say, within the Buddhist tradition, and of course other influences in my life, parents and so forth. So that, I guess, that's my background. It was in my neighborhood. The Dharma was in my neighborhood from a fairly young age, and I luckily stumbled upon it, and it's become more and more a part of my life from
Mm.
then.
That's interesting because although you were born in technically a country without Dharma, like this is not a Dharma country, you kind of were born in a Dharma country because you had centers in your neighborhood. I don't think a lot of people in Australia could say that, you know. Certainly I couldn't say that. There was nothing in my hometown, and I don't think there was even anything within 200 Ks. So yeah, it's very interesting. That's very interesting. Sometimes like that prayer, may I be born in a Dharma country, or may I be born with access to the Dharma. Sometimes clearly that works out somehow.
Sometimes it works out. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So I just want to think about your publishing now. So um, I think I was going to ask you how you got into that, but it's fairly obvious. Your guru and husband wanted Shogun Publishing to be a thing, wanted it to exist, and then you moved in that direction. Sort of I'm assuming kind of almost naturally. It's sort of where you wanted to go, or how did that happen?
Well, I initially, Traleg Rinpoche was more interested in publishing other people.
Hmm.
And so he was quite the scholar, and so he had academic friends, or very scholarly Buddhist practitioners and so forth that he would talk to, and encourage them to do a book. And so we started off with some beautiful books from academics that were written in such a way that they had, or at least the instructions were to have an accessibility to them, to just ease back the academic rigor and discipline, so that the language could be more, it was easier for the lay person to read.
Hmm.
So that's where it began. But Rinpoche did say, in his later years before he passed, that he would like to also start publishing his books through Shogun Publications as well. And so after he passed, the desire to share his teachings was naturally overwhelming, and we have some
Hmm.
very skilled editors in the Sangha, and so it was. There's a quote, and it's in the documentary, where an interviewer asked Traleg Rinpoche, what happens when the teacher passes away. And he said, the teacher, I think this is fairly close to quoting him, a teacher lives on through his or her teachings. So a teacher lives on through their teachings.
Hmm.
Um, and that part of the sentence continues to resonate with me. And when we bring out another book, often people will contact me, and they will let me know that Traleg Rinpoche has become their main teacher, or that they, have they've been studying the Dharma for a long time, and this particular book helped them to bridge a misunderstanding that they had, or it assisted in their relationship with their tantric practice, or whatever it might be. And so it becomes like a living, like a living embodiment. His legacy continues to have this ripple effect. And so, I feel very passionate about sharing Rinpoche's teachings, and any work that I do towards the books. And of course, it's not me alone. We have wonderful people working on the books with me. The intention is to share Rinpoche's teachings, but somehow, when you're working with the teachings, you benefit so much
Mm.
that it's it's impossible somehow just to try and give to the teacher without being showered with an abundance of extraordinary blessings, I
Mm.
guess I would say.
Yeah. And I think that's because in editing, we're close reading.
Yes.
So when we buy a book by a teacher we like, we read it and we think we're close reading, but we're not really close reading. Our attention is never what it can be, what it really completely can be. But I think when you're editing a work, you're really close reading. And I think it really strikes home when you're doing that. Um, I haven't had the benefit of editing my guru's work because my guru passed away in 1997. But I do rewrite some of the pith instructions just because I think it gives me a kind of a close reading that I really like, and I even I have favorite teachings that I have typed up, formatted, made pretty, and I think that really there's something about that level of engagement with it that really does give something that I think is powerful. So I always think the people who edit transcripts and things like that, they get such a deeper level of experience with things. I think it's really great. So I want to say something about a couple of Rinpoche's books that I really liked. So there's a bunch, there's a few. So um, I, I mean, more recently, the Cycle of the Sun and the Moon. I love that original teaching and I love that commentary. I think it's just so beautiful. That teaching is very, very important to me. And that commentary, I think, is really rich and really, sometimes those commentaries about those sorts of texts can be, I don't know, obscure or something or impenetrable. And not, but that commentary is very grounded and very, the original text, I think, is very direct and simple. And the commentary mirrors that. It's very simple. It's very easy to, I don't mean simple in a bad word. That simple for me is like a very high compliment. It's hard to get teachings like that to be simple. So I really like that. I love that book. And I think it used to be called Moonbeams of Mahamudra, but it might have had a name change. Is that right? That book? Or it had another name and now it's Moonbeams of Mahamudra?
No, the moonbeams of Mahamudra was always moonbeams of Mahamudra.
Right.
Um, Luminous Bliss is the Australian version or the original version
Right.
of Mind at Ease, which is the name in America, produced by Shambhala Publications. So I
Right.
don't know if
Yeah.
that, yeah, there was a slight, there's a slight variation in those books.
In the territories.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. I love that book. I think that's a beautiful book. And there's another one which I I'm not sure, but is it called um no, I'm not sure what it's called. It's the one in which he breaks down essentially there's sutra, there's tantra, there's Dzogchen and Essence Mahamudra.
Actuality of being.
Right, right.
Actuality of being.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a great book. And I really love the way he frames Dzogchen and Essence Mahamudra as mystical paths. Like he defines. um, he defined the sutra as a certain sort of path and tantra as a certain sort of thing, and essence Mahamudra and Dzogchen as a certain sort of thing. And I like the way that he used that word mystical because it implies simplicity, connection to nature, um, not elaborate, not ritual, not, you know. So I really like that he did that. I think he might be the only person to have done that. And I repeated that in my own books. I quote him in that, in his definition of that, because I think it's profoundly true and profoundly uh, insightful, actually, to sort of really make that distinction is if thinking really important. Anyway, those are the books that I've loved, and there's others, of course, but those are the three that I think really um, have really moved me and have been important to me, both intellectually. I'm not really an intellectual Dharma practitioner, although I'm an academic and stuff. I'm more a uh, I'm more a love bunny. Like I'm really about the devotion and about um, the feeling of it. So those books have been important intellectually, but also in terms of the feeling of the things. Like I like how they cut through. I really like that about them. Anyway, enough about me. So this brings on to my next thing, which the thing about bridging real philosophical and Dharma depth, like real depth with the accessibility, which you already talked about, is one of the sort of founding ideas of Shogam, to bring complex philosophical ideas or Dharma ideas and make them accessible to a general readership. So I'm just wondering, um, like you said before, that that was an original idea of Rinpoche's. I'm just wondering how you do that, how you maintain that spirit that Rinpoche initiated. Is it simply about, um, I mean, with Rinpoche's teachings, you don't need to do much, I don't think, because he's already, in the way he teaches, he's already like that. But when you're talking about other writers, other authors or other teachers, is it difficult? How do you do it?
Yeah, look, it can be actually. It can be challenging. And just going back to what you were saying about that devotional and that feeling part, that really scholarship and devotion and feeling um, are not separate
Hmm.
from the practitioner's perspective. Not that I'm suggesting that you were saying that it was separate, but if I look at Traleg Rinpoche's, you're right. There's a question that we ask ourselves when we're putting the teachings together into a book is, can I hear Rinpoche's voice?
Hmm.
Because because it was so penetrable, and it went straight to the heart, not because it was mushy, but because it was a thesis of rationality that used language that was designed for the collective dispositional tendencies of the Western mind, really, because it may not be as meaningful, I suggest, to possibly some people in the East. So just to say that, the challenge that we have with other authors, um, uh, if we're looking at somebody with an academic background, for example, often when they actually give a course or give a, do a speaking or presenting papers, often it's very relatable. Like they're showing you how they came to certain conclusions. They're interacting with the audience, and sometimes, really, some academics bring their own study to life. But if you ask them to do a paper on it, then you have the weight of them sort of barely making a statement without referencing where it came from, with all of these things. There's not a freedom of expression often for the academic in their writing because it is a critical environment. Criticism in academia, Western academia, is intertwined. And so, you can understand that the academic will not speak freely often because of the level of critiquing and criticism that would come with that. And so it's really directing them to the spoken word when they're wanting to engage their audience. We can often get to the heart of what they are wanting to say, but
Mm.
then we kind of need them to have the courage to put the spoken word into writing.
Mm.
And so I think it's a challenge for the academic more so than others. And of course, there are also people who are just very willing to write. So anyway, it's an ongoing challenge. But one of the keys, I believe, is to have them immerse themselves in who they're speaking to. Who is, the one of those questions, who is your audience?
Mm.
And always bringing it back to that moves it out of any sort of sense of self-protection or wanting to prove one's mastery of certain aspects of Buddhism or whatever it might be. What the audience, think of the audience, who are you writing for? And so bringing that personability, bringing that relationship with your audience back into the writing, and it's challenging.
Mm.
I understand very much that an author who is also an academic, to move out of that rigor, that how they write within their discipline. But what I also find is because there's a lot more cross-disciplinary discussion these days in academia, that I think it is moving that way. And from time to time, when I speak to academics, you can see the desire for dialogue outside of their field, and with practitioners. So I think really it's moving in the right direction. And when Traleg Rinpoche was writing about this gap in the market, of course, that gap really, in many ways, has been filled these days. But the challenge does still remain. It is a work in progress, sort of more broadly speaking, in the Dharma world, I believe.
Mm.
Um,
I think that's all very interesting. I think as an academic myself, it's always been very hard to condense into, um, simple language, a 20-year career. Like that's quite hard. And everything that you know about a thing into a short thing. So I really get that. And I know academics who are in disciplines that are very competitive. If they kind of don't show off what they know and the lineage of their um, thoughts, they just get canned. I was lucky I was in a more gentle discipline, but in some disciplines it can be quite ruthless. And sadly, philosophy is one of them, where if you don't show the lineage of your thinking, like who are the antecedents of your thoughts, um, it's considered sloppy philosophy. It's just sloppy philosophy, or they might even use the word pop philosophy.
yes.
So it's a real challenge, but I think if you look at the Buddhist publishing world now, there's still definitely light, Dharma light, a lot of that. Like, and if you look at the top 10 bestsellers, they're almost always Dharma light. They're not, they're self-help books, really, and they're not really engaging with practice. It's very little of that. It's a lot of talking about how to cope and how to be a better this and etc. But there's not a lot about like pure Dharma practice. There's also very little um, about the fundamentals of Dharma, impermanence, emptiness, etc. You just don't see a lot of that being discussed, and they're fundamental. So I think you are actually still doing something very important because I don't think that gap has been filled in any way, shape, or form. I think there's more in that space. You're right, but there's a lot of yeah, if you look at the popular books, they're all Dharma light.
Yes.
And then there's the philosophical treatises, the commentaries on, Madhyamaka philosophy, all that stuff, which is much more academic, which gets published more by academic publishers. But there's very little in the middle. Like there's some, but there's not a lot, I would say. I think Shogum's doing something good by being in that space. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're very I agree with everything you just said, Pema. And yeah, we're very committed to kind of holding that space, really, and continuing on. So yeah, I do tend to agree with you. And there is a tremendous challenge to have depth and accessibility. It's a very interesting balance.
Mm.
Traleg Rinpoche always walked in that space.
Mm.
And so, in that sense, we can be really guided by that. Um, so for him, it manifested really as if it was easy.
Mm. Yeah. It was his um habitual way of being.
In a sense, this won't be a quote, but in a sense, um, I, I think um, he couldn't see the point of writing something that could not be accessible
Mm. And applied. Yeah, there's a quote.
and applied. Yeah.
I think there's a quote. I'm not sure who from, but it's something like if you can't apply the Dharma, it's just dry parchment, something like that. There's some sort of quite old quote, or it's just dust, something like that. If you can't apply it to your life, it's of no value. So I think that's really important. It's like, and it's one of the things in the West that I think is very important because we're in the process of um, doing what every other culture has ever done, which is not adapting the Dharma to us, but um, finding our way into the Dharma, you know, finding our way in. Every culture's done that differently. Like some cultures have become very philosophical and scholarly, and others have become more sort of like at home, almost like folk religion sort of way of going into the Dharma. And in the West, we have to find our own way. And I think that that's really important part, like, because other publishers have a lot of Dharma light books and some scholarly books, but not a lot of books that are both, like they have the depth and the accessibility in the same book. They're either or. And I think that's a unique, this is the editing and publishing scholar in me. I think that's the unique selling point of Shogun. The books, each book is both. It's not, we have a list of more general stuff and we have a scholarly list. Like other publishers would have a general list and a scholarly list. But I think that you're doing something like quite different, which is that every book is deep, but also accessible. I think that's interesting about what you do. And I think it's great that it's in Australia.
Yes. Yes. I find myself just agreeing with what you say.
I like that.
But we're very lucky to have to be working with these teachings, um, and because while you're working with them, your life is changing,
Mm,
and your perspective, and preciously held beliefs and conceptual constructs are being broken down,
mm,
and fresher, um, you know, mental environment is being rebuilt. And of course, that needs to be broken down again and rebuilt and broken down. But yeah, we're very happy to be in that, stay in that space.
Very special space.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We're
So I
not seeking
wanted,
to be
go
popular
ahead.
in the sense. We're just very devoted to what we are doing, and
Mm.
trying to maintain the vision that Rinpoche had of Shogam. So that's, it's we're not, we may never have a bestseller, as it were. Um, that isn't our aim, if you like.
Yeah, but I think it will happen. It's just a question of time. So I wanted to quickly talk about the Journal of Integral Buddhism.
Yes.
So just give us a sense of what that journal is. It was launched in 2022. I believe it was also one of Rinpoche's like visions to do this.
Yes, I describe it as his wish.
Mhm.
Um, as it happened I managed an academic journal as part of my job in one of my consultancy, positions. And we were speaking about the journal. So when you're managing an academic journal, you're really leaving the academics to do their thing.
Mm.
Just, so you're very much in the background. So I wasn't involved in the success of the journal in that respect, but as an observer of what was going on. And so, was speaking to Rinpoche about it, and he said he would love to have such a journal where different aspects of different schools of Buddhism were presented, or dialogue between a practitioner and a scholar, with a variety of approaches to bringing to life the tenets of Buddhism, integrating this into one's life. How do the different schools do that? And he just said he had a wish.
Mm.
And so it was something that when Rinpoche gave instructions or he had a wish, that was really lodged in my mind very firmly. And so I just, while this wasn't a direct instruction of what needs to be done after he passes away, it was a wish. And for me, that was important. And it took quite a few years to bring it to fruition. Mainly because, again, when I was speaking with academics, they couldn't get their head around it.
Yeah.
Um, it didn't fit their criteria, it would seem. I'm not bagging academics, by the way. I hope that it's not coming over that way. But when you have a very disciplined approach to anything that you write, and then somebody comes along with something that doesn't quite fit, I think it's challenging. Nonetheless, we have had a number of people offering papers. So we're still really in our early stages. Volume 3 will be out early 2026. We have practitioners, scholars, psychologists in this next volume, and we try and present as many schools as we can with each volume. And you can say that it's not exactly peer reviewed, but we have a doctor of psychology, a master of counseling, and myself, I just have a degree in psychology, who do review and vet the papers. So it's not formally an academic journal as such, but it is an opportunity to display the diversity of the Dharma. And really, if you like, one could say to challenge any sense of dogma.
Mm.
This is the way you should practice, or whatever it might be, to really challenge that idea. And I know I was speaking briefly to the librarian at the Great Stupa in Bendigo. I think, I don't know, it was phone call or emails and one thing and another. And I described the Journal of Integral Buddhism, and she was saying that is really something that has a great deal of synergy with what they're doing with the Great Stupa. That all different kinds of Buddhists, all different kinds of people are welcome to come and Decora to experience this beautiful environment that they've created in Bendigo. And so, you know, if one starts to become too a little tight with how they feel that the Dharma should be experienced or how it should be practiced, perhaps the Journal of Integral Buddhism is for them to read that. I have found in you know, checking papers or proofing, editing papers and things like that, it's so wonderful to read the different perspectives. And thus far, I have just been interested, excited, and intrigued. It's very refreshing, I think, from a practitioner's perspective, to be introduced to different types of approaches to bringing the Dharma into one's life. So yeah, we're just at the beginning, really.
I think that's really great. I think we as practitioners, we get into silos because we start in our particular traditions and then we go deeper and then and we very much feel that that tradition is our home. And then, you know, our teachers are all of that tradition usually. Some of us have teachers from various traditions, but that's strangely less and less common. Certainly, it's very rare for someone to have a Tibetan Buddhist teacher and a Theravadan teacher. Like that is very, very, very rare. And I think it would be great if it happened more. And I think the journal does something important there in the opening that up. Because I think um, although it's important to practice consistently and persistently in the way that you practice and not be all over the place,
Yes.
it is a really good idea to understand there's more than one Buddhism. At the bare minimum, there's, you know, Sutra, Mahayana, Vajrayana, Dzogchen. At the bare minimum, you know, there's those four very different things. But then within that, like there's lots of different traditions that do things very differently. And I think diversity is a really important way of relaxing and letting go and being open and kind. Like, I think it's great. I think that's really good. And we don't see enough of it, frankly. We
I,
get
I
stuck in
think
our
I think you're
silos.
right. I really think you're right there, because again, I think there's sort of a tension when you find your Dharma home, if it is within one main tradition, you know, one can deepen one's understanding, and the, you know, the importance, as you were saying, of doing the practices within that tradition, or even if it's two schools, you know, so Traleg Rinpoche was Kagyu Nyingma.
Mm, mm,
So he also described himself as Rime. But you know, one, as you say, wants to embody the teachings, and it has found their home. But that home can turn on us
mm.
if it becomes if it becomes dogmatic, or if we are unable to listen to anybody else, or if we strangely become hierarchical about it, like mine is better than yours, or
Mm.
my school was here before yours was, or I don't know, or you know,
We're the OG,
yeah,
the
yeah,
original. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And, but the other thing is, and Rinpoche speaks about this. I'm not sure if it's the Karma book by Shambhala Publications, or it may just simply be a teaching that I've been editing, where Traleg Rinpoche really reminds us that when we are attracted to a teacher, that um, there's an aspect of compatibility, and there should be a great diversity of teachers, and that we can't be round peg, square hole, if we're going to be, really have a healthy devotional relationship with the teacher, and for the teacher's relationship with us to be healthy as well. Compatibility and relationship, and finding one's home, needs to be healthy. And with such diversity, naturally within the human condition, or with any living being, we don't have to be homogenized,
Mm.
and we can embrace the teacher that we have, that compatibility, and we work with that relationship. It's not you lock it in. This is where I am, and it's not a lock. It's a path. It's a progress. It's a
Mm.
progression, I should say. Um, so, yeah, I think it's a tremendous reminder.
Mm. I think certainly also in um, uh, my partner's guru was Khabje Togden Amchen of the Drukpa Kagyu Kampaka um, tradition, and he taught all of his students completely differently. So we know that particularly the Tibetans, he taught in a very traditional way, tantric practices, empowerments, sadhanas, all that stuff, the typical Tibetan pathway. But the Westerners, he started from day one teaching them straight up Dzogchen because
Yes.
he found that they were his insight is incredible, actually, to get that so fast with just a handful of Western students turning up. And some he didn't teach at all. He just allowed them to do whatever they were doing. I'm not sure the reason for that, but there's clearly a reason. So, and even to the point where um I know a couple of students, including my partner, they asked, should we learn Tibetan? He said, no, just practice. You don't need to learn Tibetan. And also, should I get this empowerment? Should I get that empowerment? No. He often just sort of said, no, just do the sort of simple practice that you're doing now. So he taught everybody differently. And yet, with the same um, kindness behind it. It wasn't trying to fit everyone into a mold.
Yes.
It was, I see who you are, I like who you are, and this is the teaching that will work for you. I really like that about him. He's really quite special, but also,
Extraordinary.
but also not uncommon. A lot of teachers are like that, you know.
Well, yes, when as you were describing this wonderful master, it reminded me of a practitioner who'd been practicing for many years, and he went to his teacher, and said, what should I do? And he said, sit over there and don't do anything.
Oh, yes. Yes.
That was an ongoing instruction for him.
Intense.
He'd pop back in and sort of say, now, how about, will I do this, or will I do that? He'd go, sit over there and don't do anything.
Mm.
And so, and of course, you
I've
saw
got goosebumps.
yeah, yes. And there were other Sangha members who were so busy and learning, such detailed ritual and so forth. So there was just an extraordinary diversity of approaches. Um, Very interesting.
Yeah, I'll just tell a quick story that is in the same vein. The great Togden Shakya Shri, again another Drukpa, but also Nyingma, mainly Drukpa. He had in the valley where he lived, he had two sort of separate hermitages on either side of the valley. On one side, it was all uh, tantric Kagyu Mahamudra students and all the Dzogchen students. They kept them completely separate. So crossed the valley to do the teachings, so completely separate. But also there's a story about Dudjom Lingpa, who's the founder of the Dudjom lineage, the Dudjom Chosa. He had also multiple sort of streams, people who were mainly Chudpas, so taught the Troma Chud to them. Other people who did like Vajrakalaya, those are the two main sort of tantric things he did. But then he had a smaller group of students who he literally just would throw them into a cave, not throw physically into a cave, but put them into a cave or a hut and say, for the next 90 days, you are to do nothing.
Yes.
Don't think of the Lama. Don't do mantra. Don't do prayers. Don't do anything. Do nothing. And it was just make or break. They either came out, I suppose, exactly as they went in, or they came out in their nature, 90 days of doing absolutely nothing and sitting completely still. I think the instruction is body is still as a corpse, voice is silent as a mute, mind untouched. So it's like simple 3-line instruction about body, speech, and mind, but just do nothing, sit completely still, don't do anything at all, and it would either make or break people. I just think when you said that about that student who was told to sit in the corner and do nothing, I was like, oh, yeah, yeah, that's an intense instruction.
That's an intense instruction.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, very intense and very, very hard to do. Like,
Yes. Yes. And I think this particular person just benefited so enormously
yeah, and
from
the
that
teacher
instruction.
often knows exactly what to do. If
Yeah.
they're in themselves accomplished, the teacher knows what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really great. So, I want to ask you about um, how would I put this? So, you've done a bunch of retreats,
Yes.
and you're a Dharma practitioner,
Yes.
and you now are running a publishing house. So, I'm just wondering if you see or perceive a difference between those things, being in retreat, running the Dharma house, publishing house, sorry, or if you see them all as like a spectrum of the same practice or something else. Yeah.
Yes. So, Retreat, the publishing house, is the, uh, can you just clarify the
Yeah. So do you see it as two different things or the same practice, just done differently?
there are they're both different and similar,
Mm,
or the same. So you can't not practice intensely when you're editing books.
mm,
If you just go into editor mode or business person mode, or administration mode, the book will not come together. So they're like semi-retreat when you put a book together. And then, of course, you have the administration and, maintaining aspect of the business and all of those sorts of things. And one's meditation is informed and enriched by the process of developing a book. And the book cannot be developed appropriately if one isn't practicing.
mm,
So, but also there are times that one does retreat. And I would say now it's retreat for me is not separate to the teachings in the books.
mm,
There are some teachings that don't lend themselves to a book. They lend themselves to having classes with, perhaps a small or medium-sized group of people, and we work through the teachings and do practices together, and we kind of have a shared experience as a Sangha members, or a sense of community, and enriching one another's path. So yes, so in some respects, I guess earlier on, before I took on these roles, I had the person who went on retreats. I had my, meaning myself, the person who worked as a consultant, and the person who cared for her teacher and looked after certain things at the center. And now the focus is more singular.
Mm.
But, the way the world is, even with that singularity, you have to have you put on many hats. Even if you're looking at sort of how to manage social media, or what the website needs to say, or what the distributor needs to know, or, having some degree of strategic planning. So all of these things, but the difference between when I was consulting for business and when I've brought some of my business skills into Shogun Publications, and the center, is it's the level of meaning to everything that one does. So if, one is tidying up a database or sorting out a problem, or, troubleshooting, as I don't know if they still call it that, whatever one is doing, it has meaning,
Mm.
that is just so precious to have a meaningful life. That, the work life, once that's done, great, then the meaningful part happens. Or if our work life is meaningful, then maybe another part lacks depth or heart, or it doesn't, it's not very much in consideration of other beings. And so it's like all the different pieces, and the experiences were able to come together at this time, which I'm very lucky,
Yeah,
yeah, to have this experience.
it's rare. And I think so in a sense it's your life is becoming more integrated. It's all about Dharma, but there's different tasks within that. And also that idea of bringing Dharma into daily life. That's what's happening for you. And I think that's very fortunate. I don't think many people can say that. They have, jobs and then they have Dharma. Yeah, I think it's great that that's happening. I think I really love that you said you can't bring out a Dharma book without doing your practice. I think that's profoundly true. I, however, think it's not necessarily something that is a common understanding in publishing. Publishing is, um, a business, as you know. And I think sometimes if you've been doing it a long time, people just, the practice more and more becomes background and the business becomes foreground rather than the other way around. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I don't know if this is an appropriate thing to say sort of publicly, but I'll say it anyway. Is that Rinpoche said, remember that profit is not the goal.
Mm.
And he said, one must break even.
Yeah.
Um, so we have to be grounded and have responsibility there. But he said it's the quality of the work. That's where we need to focus.
Yeah.
And of course, um, because at the moment the main focus is ensuring that Rinpoche's teachings are published. The quality is there, and if there's any lack of quality, it's because of the editors,
Mm.
or the proofreaders, or whatever it might be. But it's very nice to keep that in mind.
Mm. So in a
So
sense, you're a not-for-profit. It,
in
if
in
profit happens, it happens, but it's not the goal.
that's right. That's right.
Mm.
And that's really, if you want to sleep soundly at night, that is a beautiful part of it. That doesn't mean that if something if it became more profitable, then that's fine.
Mm,
That it's not it's that's okay. But it's the quality of the work is the key to what we're doing.
mm.
It's very easy for once you let the quality drop, it's a bit of a sliding slope.
The slippery slope.
It's a
Mm.
slippery slope. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
All right. I want to ask you a little bit about the documentary.
yeah.
So, was that just last year or is it longer now?
It would be a few years now.
Oh,
Yeah.
it seems
I
like so recent.
yeah, yeah. Well, it I mean it's maybe 3 years or
Okay.
I'm
Oh,
not
yeah. Oh, was it 2023? I think. I'm not sure.
I
Anyway,
should know. I don't know.
I should know. I should have done my research. So, the documentary is called Beyond Two Worlds.
Yes.
Yep. And it's about the life of Traleg Kyabgon Rinpoche. So just want to talk about how that all happened in a general sort of sense, but also if Shogun will be doing more multimedia sort of things in the future.
Yes. Well, I guess first of all, yes, Shogum is planning to do more multimedia in the future. Um, and it came about, we're very lucky that we have some filmmakers in our Sangha, as it happens.
Mm.
And two of the filmmakers traveled with Traleg Rinpoche through Europe, America, and importantly through China and into Tibet. And so we had at the time of Rinpoche's passing, we had hours and hours of footage. And further, Rinpoche had spoken to the filmmakers about a documentary and also of some shorter, ongoing sort of, I'll call them travel kind of film that takes the viewer on a journey, and it can be an undefined journey. So we had some instructions and some wishes of Rinpoche, and so the documentary, I suddenly, when suddenly all the threads came together. So I felt that the documentary was getting overdue. It was, I thought we need all the pieces to come together. And I met a woman, Jocelyn Fay Melly, who was starting up a multimedia business, and she was sort of involved in editing and these types of things. And she'd actually been my attendant when I was at the first time was Taramandala in America, and then at Marpa House in the UK, and we became friends. So when she told me that she was launching into this, that was, to me, that was the missing thread. The filmmakers who had taken the footage weren't in a position to put their careers aside and make the
Mm.
documentary. They simply weren't. And Jocelyn suddenly was in a much better position to do that. And she didn't expect to have such a big project. And to her credit, put things aside. We worked it all out so that she could work on it. And so once all the pieces were together, and Lee Tilson, who's a filmmaker, worked effectively as a consultant, and he had taken a lot of the footage, particularly significant footage in Tibet and China. And so he was on board 100%. He would have liked to have done the documentary, but the time was not there, and Jocelyn was there. And so it was a team of three. I did a storyboard, which brought in the elements that needed to be included. And the process was that we allowed Rinpoche to arise through the footage, is how I would describe it. And that informed the selection. So as Rinpoche started to emerge, because initially it was, it kind of, the storyboard was filled with little bits of footage, but Rinpoche hadn't really emerged. We weren't quite, hadn't quite, somehow the spirit of Rinpoche hadn't arisen. And so Jocelyn described a process of getting out of the way
Mm.
and allowing Rinpoche to emerge. And so it was the footage, allowing Rinpoche to emerge. And Rinpoche emerged through the footage, some of the quotes that we selected, some of the Sangha members who spoke about Rinpoche, and then at some point he was there. And it was like holding something very precious and fragile, because what I've learned in filmmaking is it doesn't take much to somehow lose the balance or lose the magic. And so it becomes a living, breathing thing. So we needed to know when we were there. And we were there because, similar to the books, we heard his voice and felt his presence. And so that was quite the journey. If you can imagine, as the widow, watching footage over and over and over again, it was powerful and painful and beautiful and quite the challenge in terms of self-management to move through that. And that was the journey of the documentary. And it's for others now. And rarely, it was once at the beginning of this year, I thought, I need to watch the documentary. It's almost like you spending time with Rinpoche. And I may never watch it again. I don't know. But sometimes, if you need to spend time with Rinpoche, you pick up a book, you reflect on his teachings. Sometimes it's the documentary. But we are going to be moving into, which I find very exciting, a shorter, I don't know what to call them, perhaps short films, where there'll be footage and teachings intertwined, that don't necessarily, the journey that the viewer goes to will not necessarily be defined. And so it's a different kind of creativity. We haven't, we haven't physically embarked on that as yet, but there are different pieces. Again, we're in the aspect of pieces. So we have some musicians who've written music. There are different aspects of teachings that seem to be emerging that will be incorporated. Some of the footage has been selected, but we haven't gone through that process of drawing the pieces together and seeing them come to life. But so over the next few years, these things take time, and we are looking forward to more I guess cinematic experience that we provide.
That sounds exciting. Almost like little filmic pith instructions. So a little short, teaching packed. I think that sounds great. All right. So, and that will be, um, how will they be distributed? Will they be just put on YouTube or will they be on your website? How will they be?
Yeah, well, what will I think we'll do it similarly to the way we did the documentary. We'll have an online premiere, and then there are some Buddhist film festivals,
Hmm.
and so we'll um, see if they're interested in some of the short films. We also offered the documentary for fundraisers. So it's a beautiful Akon Rinpoche Centre in London did a fundraiser for some refugees, and so we offered the film for that. So that was really lovely. That if somebody was raising money for a temple or they had other things that they wanted to, that we would offer that to them for free. So we did the premiere. We offered, and so we had the film festivals. Then we did some offerings for charitable fundraising. And then after, that took sort of about 18 months, and then it can be streamed. So you go to the Shogam Publications website or the Vimeo website, put in Beyond Two Worlds, and you just click there and you can watch it once, or you can purchase it and you have that link forever, and you can watch it as often as possible. So some people like to watch it from time to time, you
Hmm.
know. Um,
I think we purchased it. I have to try and remind myself where it lives. It's often when you buy these things, these digital products, it's like using different accounts, like a Vimeo account or this account or that account, and then it's hard to find. It's there's something about this digital thing.
I
It's
know
it's like, where is that
organizing
again?
all,
Where is it
yeah,
stored in my stuff?
yeah, organizing the links.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. No, we
yeah.
bought it. We bought it when it became available to, I think we bought it. We may have just streamed it. I'm not sure. But when that became available, we did watch that, my partner and I, and we really liked it. It was really lovely. It was really great to see you in your previous incarnations.
Oh yes, yes, yes. Somebody made a comment that I had a lot of different haircuts.
Yes, that's what I was kind of inferring.
Oh yes, I didn't.
I love a haircut.
I I didn't even, that never even crossed my mind. So that was fun to hear. That
Yeah.
was fun to
I
hear.
am for the last maybe 20 years, I haven't really had a haircut. I just every couple of years I shave it and then I just let it grow out. And then
Right.
it gets to the point where I'm like, I want this hair off and I shave it. So I haven't had a haircut. And then I remember watching that and thinking, I wouldn't mind having a haircut. Because it's a thing, it's a thing rather than just shaving it and then letting it grow. Yeah. Anyway, okay, that's a bit of an aside. All right.
Fun
So,
aside.
I want to skip. I think I'll skip the next question that we had planned because I think we've kind of covered it already. But I did want to ask you, what are you reading right now or have read recently that is resonating with you? So it can be something recent you've read or something that you read, a couple of years ago that's really resonating with you, or even I asked my partner this question. He's like, "There's no such thing as a favorite Dharma book. Dharma practitioners don't have favorites, honestly." But I can think of a few. So is there a book that you're reading right now that you're really enjoying, or one that resonates with you that you've read recently or a little while ago?
Well, I probably, there are two that I will mention. Longchenpa's Three Cycles really, um, it was sort of cellular. Working on that particular book, um, I, I've never sort of lived within a pause like those teachings. Um, and it's almost like I don't remember the words. I remember the pause.
Mm.
Um,
The
and so,
transmission.
yes, yes, and I have a deep desire to take that book um, and really spend time with it. So I would say that it has, there's a hook and it's drawn me in, but I have other responsibilities at the moment. But it sort of rests as a jewel on my bookshelf, and I have a longing, I would say.
Mm. So just for the audience, there's multiple translations of Longchenpa's trilogy.
Yes,
This is the one you're talking about is the one that is translated by Traleg Kyabgon Rinpoche and with a commentary by him.
yes,
Yeah. So
yes,
I will say about this, and I want to get this in. Um, it is, I think I don't want to be too biased, but I think it's the best translation of that text available. And I think the commentary is one of the best available. Sometimes Longchenpa, um, as an academic, I often read post-structural theory translated from French into English, so Foucault, Derrida, etc. And depending on the translator, whether or not you got it or not. So I often found with translations of Foucault, for example, impenetrable, awful. But then I'd find another translation of the same thing and just go, the lights all go on. And I think Longchenpa is like that. I think sometimes translators approach Longchenpa. He's the omniscient one. He's this great philosopher. And they forget that he was a meditator and actually, although a great scholar too, I think sometimes they translate, like I've seen some translations where they use actually almost Old English, like thee and thou and oh, and I'm like, oh, really? Come on. But this one is so accessible and it stands out. And then the commentary is again to quote KJ Togjen Amtrin, my partner's guru. He was once giving and I got this story from Jetson Tenzin Palmo. He was once giving a commentary on a Sogdian text like that, one of the sort of very famous ones, and he just stopped and was like, "Oh, you know what? Like sometimes this can make Dzogchen seem very difficult, but it's actually very easy and simple." And I think that, again, this accessibility, I think that's something that's really important. And especially with someone like Longchenpa, who's been translated by essentially scholars and they use scholarly language. It's like I write silly young adult fiction. Not a lot of people know that. I do it under a different name. But it's actually because I want to keep um, practice in with writing like ordinary things, just writing ordinary stuff so that people, I mean, I hide Buddhist stuff in there, but ordinary language, just reaching ordinary people. Because I think sometimes, I'm not going to name which translation, but there's one translation of Longchenpa's Pith Instructions that's just so impenetrable. You know, I just think it's not helpful. But then this series, I think, is so well translated and I think it's because of his practice. The practice illuminates the text. It's like sometimes you get these commentaries on text and it's like you can kind of tell this person doesn't really get this because I'm not getting it from them.
yes,
So
yes,
that's my 2 or 3 minute rant about how great I think that is. And I think it should be on all of the advertising. Accessible, approachable, contemporary, modern translation and commentary. Like those words need to be in the PR around those books because they really stand out exceptional,
yes,
in my
yes,
humble opinion.
yes. No, thank you. I your advice on yeah, on how to let people know about the books and the essence of those books is very helpful. But yes, it is astounding. It's an astounding. Rinpoche has brought the he it's an example of his generosity that he
Mm.
brings everything to to the listener,
To where you are.
to where you are, and gives you everything you need to progress on the path, to unravel things that aren't working, and everything. So that just, yeah, it's just astounding. Now, the other thing that I would say is the book that I'm working on at the moment, which the title is Talking About Death.
Mm.
And so this has been, this is a beautiful journey, which hasn't finished yet. And part of what is wonderful about the journey is the reflections that one makes. Um, Also, I usually do research and look at other books that other,
Mm. Mm.
people and teachers have written on death. And so I'm feeling very enriched in this process. But there's not a lot that I can speak about now, except that it's coming up early next year. And it's the first time that I'm going to add in my own section in this.
Oh, that is so exciting.
So, because Rinpoche gave me instructions when, when the cat was ill,
Mm. Mm.
when, when my grandmother was dying, I saw the different instructions he would give to some people who either were dealing with grief or were facing their own death and so on. And I'm going to try and draw these together, and so that will be part of the book as well. But it's a wonderful book in terms of taking back our power, if you like,
Mm.
um, and to be aware of how prepared we can be for death.
Mm. Mm.
um, and how, what a wonderful impact that can have on our life now. And so it's like sometimes if we think about enlightenment as being impossible, and then that can depreciate our experience now. To get the power back, we recognize um, we recognize uh, how much we can understand how the mind works, and how much we can embody the sense of impermanence, and how that can be enriching, enlightenment or not. So in a sense, enlightenment can remain sort of distant in the sense that what I'm doing now is important. So in a sense, it's getting the power back from a treading the path perspective,
Mm.
you know. So I don't know if I articulated that very well, but so this journey that I'm going on with the book is very profound, engaging, and very positive and optimistic.
Mm. Yeah. So just can you repeat the title of that book for us?
I'm talking about death.
Talking about death. And it'll be out 2026.
Yes, it'll be out 2026, around about May, I think. I may get it a little earlier. I may get it out a little earlier, and I will certainly let you know.
Yeah, we'll get you back when it's out and we'll talk about
Yes,
it. Because as
yes.
you know, I am a fanboy of death. I am a huge fan of death. I know it sounds like a strange thing to say, but the for me, um, death is the most important moment of a practitioner's life, and it is the opportunity for total liberation, like complete freedom. And I think, unfortunately, Buddhism gets a bad rap because it does talk about death a lot. But I think, like if we like, even when I say to people, "Oh, I'm a fanboy of death," they go, "Ooh, total fanboy." But it's a moment in which freedom is possible
Yeah.
in a way that other moments, there is that in every moment, but we are unburdened in the moment of dying by the very thing that makes awakening um, unlikely when we're still mired in our habitual shenanigans. But I think death is just like so I've always felt very um I mean I had not a good relationship with death when I was young, but I have changed that through the Dharma. And it's like I'm a massive fan of discussions of death.
Yes, I in the UK. I'm embarrassed to say that I can't think of Akong Rinpoche's centre's name, something Zong, in London,
Hmm.
and they have a death cafe.
Yeah, Death Cafe. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm aware of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's such a relief for so many people to have a place to talk about it because we're all well, maybe not yourself, but we're all kind of afraid. We all are self-preserving, which is good. It's important, but it's even in young people in primary school, the thought of death comes up, and
Mm,
discussions.
mm.
I recall discussions in third grade.
Well, our pets pass away.
Yeah,
Family members pass away. Yeah.
how do you feel about death? What happens if somebody dies? And then of course, as you say, the death experience when the grandpas die or a child dies or whatever it might be. We nobody can escape that reality, and the beauty of integrating the idea of death into one's life is just so wonderful, enriching, and important. I actually have a quote here. It's from Rinpoche's book on karma.
I'd have that book, I think.
Yeah, I might just read that to you. Um, and so it's talking for, anyway, I'll just read it. A further modifier in terms of a one-to-one relationship between action and effect is the taking stock at the time of death. The highly significant moment in our life can change our mental outlook and effectively override much of the negative karma accumulated to that point, even if we have led a bad life overall. Our next birth may prove favorable, and yet this does not necessarily mean we have avoided the outcome of past karmic deeds. Tendencies can lie dormant in the mind stream and may arise down the track. However, one can continue to work with different tendencies. In due course, they can be worn away. And Rinpoche goes on to say that if we create such a favorable environment for our next birth, that it means that when tendencies do arise that have been dormant, that we're in an environment where they can be
Mm.
exercised and I don't know what you would call it.
Managed.
The karmic weight
Mm,
can be
mm, mm.
lifted. They can be sort of karmically neutral. They become,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
that sort of imprint has been cleared. And so even if, so I think just that paragraph is just a tremendous reminder of how much we can manage in our lives, how much power we have to create the best possible circumstances for our our path to continue.
Mm.
And
I think the first couple of sentences are profoundly potent, and they actually echo. I can't remember the name of the sutra, but there's a sutra where the Buddha is talking about the moment of death, and he essentially says what Rinpoche has just said. And he said, and Duddul Lingpa has a similar quote. He's essentially saying that I'm paraphrasing the sutra. If at the moment of death you have right view, and for the Buddha at that time in the early sutras, right view means understanding of impermanence, understanding of emptiness, understanding that all conditioned mind states are poison, and an understanding that liberation is completely possible. It's real and possible. That's right view according to the early sutras. Um, you can be free. So he's really saying that that moment of death. But I think Rinpoche um, phrased it so really radically, and it really struck me. It's like, oh, that's like summing up that massive sutra in just a couple of lines, because it's a very long sutra about the time of dying. I think it's even called the Sutra of the Time of Dying in English. Anyway, so I just think it's very powerful. That moment of death, we can be free. In the Tibetan Buddhist Bardo teachings, they there's a moment in the process of dying where you can be completely liberated and either choose to be reborn or not remain in Dharmakaya. So it's total freedom in that moment. So I think death's really super important. And I think if I didn't quote that in my little book, I should have, because I've got that book and I did quote it in my book, but I'm not sure if I quoted that exact bit. But it's really uh sings to me, particularly the first couple of sentences.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
I reflect on of course at the moment because I am in the midst of this book. I reflect on even the words
Mm,
taking stock at the time of death. And one of the things that I found in retreat was very powerful were the moments in the puja when you confess.
mm,
And from a Buddhist perspective, of course, we're ultimately confessing to ourselves. You know that we're not creating a story around why I did something or justifying our actions or justifying who we are or how we're confessing. We're laying bare how we've acted, how we've responded, and everything. And that taking stock to me is such a personal confession to oneself to say, I I regret some things I could have done better, but in such a way that we don't then bury ourselves in an ongoing guilt or an ongoing regret, an ongoing shame, but that to immerse ourselves in looking at some things could have been done better, that some efforts were worthwhile, to you, sometimes people talk about your life flashes before you, that the opportunity to lay oneself fully bare to oneself, you experience the weight of karma lift.
mm, mm.
I think so anyway, that's only one aspect of it, but another thing that strikes me with this particular paragraph is the importance of being totally present for oneself. Interestingly, it seems to be a time when one needs to kind of withdraw and be totally in the moment. And I think about the challenges that would bring. So if you had children or you were worried about a loved one and you were passing,
Mm.
the um, the discipline and the importance and the challenge of fully taking stock, not grabbing onto anything that we might have been really used to in our lives, our sense of identity, our sense of self, our sense of justice, all of these things. It becomes this extraordinarily potent personal moment that any distraction would be to our detriment. So that holistic, complete and utter focus, and completely laying bare that complete and open honesty of where we are. I think it's beautiful to spend time contemplating that. And in that respect, I can, why what you say, what was you're a Dharma junkie. What did you say?
Fanboy of death.
Fanboy of death.
Yeah.
That I agree with you. It's so important. It's very sobering, very enriching, and there are so many aspects of the Dharma. Looking at the difference between reality and appearance, and having that sense of insubstantiality, the emptiness, the impermanence, as we're passing away, and through the bardo is one of the many gifts we're given as Dharma practitioners.
Something that I think, for me personally, that's important around taking stock is recognizing that we're all mired in samsara. It's not something we've selected. We haven't been given a menu and gone, I'll have that, thanks. Although in some ways our continuation in samsara is because of our actions, our choices while we're alive. But I do think that this quote from the Buddha, luminous, I'm going to paraphrase, luminous is the mind, my beggars, free of defilement. So I think when the Buddha says in the moment of dying, we need to have right view, that's part of it. To understand that our defilements are not intrinsic to our nature, and that we didn't choose them. We may have perpetuated them and done a whole lot of awful stuff. We need to acknowledge that where we are, but also we need to be non-self-clinging around our habitual tendencies. So, we need to, in that moment, understand impermanence, emptiness, the toxic nature of all conditioned mind states, and our possibility for liberation is real. And it's real because luminous is the mind, free of defilements. So I think in that moment, there's so many lamas have said it in various different ways. So I won't ascribe the quote to one particular person, but in that moment, if love is where you're abiding, you're safe, because love is the only expression of that luminous nature of mind. So if we're surrounded by our loved ones, or just remembering the love we felt in our life, that's an important taking of stock too. And also, love brings us into the present, because it's not about, if it's not attachment, I mean real love, it is not about the future, because we're content in love. So we're not wanting to change anything or seek anything else. It's also not about the past. It's about right now. It's a it's a felt experience. It's not cognitive. It's not about thinking things. It's a somatic experience. It's of the body, and it is the emanation of our own natural awareness. So, so I think part of taking stock is I think Duddul said, even a murderer in that moment, if they have right view, they can be free. You know what I mean? So it doesn't matter what you've done. Everyone has those habitual tendencies. We didn't choose a lot of it. May have perpetuated a lot of it and made some really shocking choices. But in the end, our fundamental nature is free of stain. I think that's an important part of taking stock, because that's what the Buddha meant by, if you have right view, the self doesn't exist. Whatever it did in that moment doesn't matter. You know, you need to acknowledge it, but not be self-clinging about it. It doesn't, how am I don't think I'm saying this well. That stuff doesn't um, uh, cling to the self, because the self doesn't exist. So if you understand um, this stuff is real inside the delusion of samsara, but fundamentally luminous is the mind, free
Yes,
of defilements. So I think it's
yes,
really beautiful and important. And that's why the first couple of lines where Rinpoche said, I can't remember the exact words already, I've already forgotten them, that it deals with karma,
yes,
deals with karma in that moment. And then I think we need to go, okay, this is what my life has been. I have tons of regrets. I did lots of terrible things, but that is adventitious. It's impermanent, empty, and passing. What's real is the true nature of mind, which has only these qualities: joy, love, compassion, equanimity. You know, I think that's an important part of taking stock. And I think, in my humble opinion, that that's what's missing in these teachings around dying. This understanding that no matter what we did, it doesn't stain our nature. And that's why the moment of dying can liberate us, because our nature is unstained. And a lot of people go, oh, that's like Mahayana or Vajrayana or Dzogchen or something that you're talking about there. But it's in the early sutras where the Buddha goes, luminous is the nature of mind, O monks, free of defilement. He doesn't say, O monks, he says, oh, my beggars. Free is the nature of mind, my beggars. Luminous, free of defilement. It's just one of the most profound moments in the early sutras, and it's the seed of all Mahayana and the seed of all Vajrayana and the seed of all Dzogchen. That simple statement. I think that's why death's important, because we're unencumbered in the moment of dying. Our life flashes before our eyes, but after that, all of this self-clinging and delusion that we're separate and delusion that we're small and sad and pathetic, it falls away naturally without effort. And all that's left is that luminous nature of mind. And if we have done any practice at all while we were alive, we will recognize that in that moment of dying and we will be free. But we do, as we're dying, need to reorient ourselves, as Rinpoche said, take stock, understand what this is, what this delusion is, understand what it was, but understand what you truly are. I think that's
yes.
powerful, and
And the
it gave me goosebumps when you read it out.
yes, yes. And that's not to say that ethics or the parameters aren't important. And taking stock is not easy. You know, that to be present in that moment is not easy. And um, if we have done some, I mean, all of us have could have done better in our lives. But if, you know, if we're in a much better position if we've tried to be ethical and we've worked with the mind and we've sought not to hurt others and so forth, we're in a much better position to be able to take stock. So it, you know, how we live our lives is still tremendously important. But because of how much we have to manage at the time of death, But as you say, the mind nature is untainted and it can't be tainted. Um, um, but to be present at that moment, I think is we can't underestimate that it's a challenge.
Oh,
But this
an
is
immense
such
challenge.
an immense challenge. But the opportunity to be curious and to take the opportunities that arise during the process of death. That's where these teachings and teachings that, that you find in other books by the masters on death are so helpful.
Mm.
So
So
incredibly
I think
helpful.
that's a great place for us to wind up. But I will just mirror back to you or echo back to you how important the ethics are, the foundational precepts, the five, or if we want to, we can take, more. If we become a monk or a nun, or if we want to take the eight as an anagarika. So, and the reason is exactly what you said. In the moment of dying, we want to have as little baggage as possible. So if we've lived ethically, we'll have much less baggage. Also, um, the the ethics, the essence of the five precepts or all precepts is ahimsa, non-harm, and that's because that's the natural expression of our true nature. So that uh, Traleg Rinpoche used to say, it's impossible when you're resting in your nature to do any harm to anyone or even have a harmful thought, right? So we hold the precepts until that's true, until we're protected by our own nature. They protect us while we're still mired in samsara, until we're free of that and it's a natural expression. It becomes a natural expression. I wholeheartedly agree. In our particular sangha, we're really intense about the precepts and ethics. Like it's a very important part of what we do. So yeah, absolutely. I'm so pleased you brought that up. Because I think, yes, it's true that you can hear this stuff about true nature of mind and it doesn't matter what you've done, your nature is unstained. People can go, oh, well, I'll just do whatever.
Yeah, that
I'll
was.
just like, I'll just do whatever. And they don't practice and they just go around boozing and stuff. There's a really funny line in one of my favorite pith instructions from Duddul Rinpoche where he says, there's no good calling yourself a Dzogchenpa or Dzogchenma and you're wandering around reeking from the mouth of stale beer and from the crotch from fornication, which is a little saucy. But it's
So,
absolutely so true. And unfortunately, it is people who describe themselves that way. I'm a Dzogchen practitioner who often are, you know, not living ethically because they think that they're beyond it or above it or something like that. But in my humble opinion, and this is probably controversial, the precepts are more important in Dzogchen than anything else. They're a core heart part of the practice. Without it, there's no Dzogchen. Really, there isn't. So I'm really pleased that you brought that up. I can get like um all bliss bunny and like, oh bliss bunny, nature of man. Um, but I do very much feel very committed to ethics and I teach on it all the time. And in fact, am often told, lay off of the ethics stuff. You're freaking people out. And I'm like, well, we're Buddhists.
yeah,
Non-harm is the heart of it, you know.
yes.
Anyway, I've had a lovely time. I hope you did too.
Absolutely, Pam. It's always a delight to speak with you. Always learn so much, and it's been lovely. I appreciate
Thanks. And I'm really glad that we got to talk about Shogun and we got to talk about Traleg Kyabgon Rinpoche and we got to talk about Beyond Two Worlds because I think these are all very important things. And I think there's good things coming for Shogun. I think that you're going to get that bestseller. It's just a question of time. And, you know, it's not about, um, I will say this. There's a little old nun in Ladakh who's 94 years old and she's been in retreat most of her life. And she says, um, the high teachings are not for a lot of people. They're for a few because most people aren't interested, won't get it. So in some ways, the kind of really high level teachings that Rinpoche gave are for a few, not a lot, but that will change. Soon, the teachings will become more embedded in the West, and then you'll get more and more people interested. It's just a question of time. It's
Yes.
everything's about time. But I think you're doing great stuff and you're releasing a lot, a lot. Anyway,
Thank
let's
you.
wind
Thank you
this
very
up.
much.
Thank you very much for your time. I've appreciated it.
Thank
Thank you
you.
to the listeners who are listening in. And hopefully we'll see you in May when the dying book comes out.
Yes, I would love
Excellent.
to.
For another competition. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Pema.